The Legend of the Seven Heroes 2 is the second installment of a highly popular RPG series that follows a school-based storyline. The story centers on the descendants of the heroes who once defeated the Demon King, now fighting those who seek to revive him. However, an unprecedented turn of events unfolds in the second installment when the hero's closest friend murders the Saintess, plunging the kingdom into chaos. The Emperor ultimately orders the hero to subjugate his former friend, a conflict meant to continue into the third installment. Sheena Ren, a fourth-year university student, finishes the game and prepares for a replay. At that moment, a notification appears, asking whether he wishes to start a special story involving demon sword summoning. Confused by this unfamiliar option, he selects yes, and a blinding light erupts from the screen. The light grows so intense that it seems to swallow him whole, and he finds himself unable to exert any strength. When the light fades, he suddenly discovers himself as a baby lying in a water tub. As he observes his surroundings and realizes he cannot move freely, he wonders what has happened and whether this is all a dream. The memory of the game notification resurfaces, and the thought that he may have truly reincarnated into a fantasy world begins to take hold. An elderly woman lifts the baby and asks the mother for his name. Holding the child in her arms, the mother replies that his name is Len Ashton. This revelation utterly shocks the protagonist, as the name belongs to the hero's closest friend in the game, the very character who betrays the country and is suspected of being the mastermind behind the chaos. He considers it a cruel joke, as despite sharing the same name pronunciation, he has no familiarity with this person at all, which only deepens his frustration at reincarnating as him. 7 years later, Sheena Ren, now living as Len Ashton, spars with his father who effortlessly handles his attacks. His father advises him not to jump recklessly, explaining that it only creates openings, which Len accepts. Noticing his exhaustion, his father asks if he is all right and decides to end the training for the day. Len thanks him and admits he can barely move his body, only for his father to dismiss the remark and praise his performance as worthy of his son. The Ashton family resides in a nameless village within the Liamal Empire, a Western military nation on the Elfin continent. Len's reincarnation initially comes as a profound shock, and he refuses to accept reality. But after 7 years living in a child's body, he gradually comes to terms with it. He also keeps a crucial secret from his new parents aside from reincarnation, and that is he can see other people's stats through a bracelet-like device. Unlike in the game, however, he cannot view his own stats, a limitation he finds oddly realistic. Even now, he remains unfamiliar with the demon sword summoning skill. He knows that much like in a new Game Plus scenario, hidden skills exist, allowing players to combine multiple abilities into new ones, and that certain unique skills are reserved for specific individuals. Yet this demon sword summoning ability never appears in the game he knows. His disappointment grows when he realizes that, for now, he can only summon a wooden demon sword. According to the skill description, his sword proficiency increases as he continues to use and develop it. He also learns that the sword possesses another ability, one that allows plants to grow during battle, and he wonders whether he should attempt to use it now. Even if he fulfills the special conditions needed to increase the variety of swords he can summon, he understands that he must first master the most basic forms. The biggest problem is that every time he summons the sword, it consumes mana, and if he runs out, he suffers an excruciating headache and in worse cases loses consciousness. To avoid this, he begins practicing at a very young age. While practicing in his crib, his father suddenly enters the room and he quickly hides it. Setting that aside, the existence of this skill confirms that this is the game world, and there is a fate he must avoid at all costs. For the sake of protecting himself, he begins training and learning more about the world. When he turned 7, it was his father who advised him to practice swordsmanship using dummy swords. However, instead of a dummy, he decided to use the wooden demon sword and begins training with his father. Although he does not stand a chance, even from the first day he notices that his proficiency with the skill begins to rise. From that day onward, practicing swordsmanship with his father becomes part of his routine. Training is not the only way to raise proficiency, as demon stones obtained from monsters can also be used. However, when he receives one from his father, it does not react at all, meaning he has to hunt a monster himself. Unlike the 7 heroes, this world does not allow him an easy path, so he takes everything seriously. Another month passes as Len continues his training with his father. Although he improves much faster compared to the beginning, there is still plenty of room for improvement, as his father points out his lack of balance and concentration. After losing as usual, his father ends the sparring session for the day, but this time Len wants to continue. His father advises him not to push himself, reminding him that he is doing well and that overexertion will only lead to injury. After saying this, he leaves and tells Len to come for dinner, and Len thanks him. When Len checks his status later, he notices that he is only a few days of training away from leveling up his demon sword. Even though he pushes himself past his limits every day, it only increases by 2 points daily, which from a gamer's perspective does not seem bad. Lately, however, his life has been growing a little more interesting. When he returns home, his mother notices the blisters on his hands and feels that the sword training is too harsh. Len reassures her that it is fine, saying that he enjoys swordsmanship. She is already aware of this, as the Ashton family consists of knights who protect the village, and she finds his love for swords truly wonderful. Noticing her concern, Len asks whether she hates swords, and she replies that it is more fear than hatred. She explains that even when they were young, his father was a courageous warrior who fears no monster and saved her many times. What she fears is that this bravery might one day become a curse and become the very reason he gets badly hurt. Even though she holds the utmost respect for her husband, and the monsters he hunts provide their income while their meat is shared with other villagers, the worry never fully leaves her. At that moment, his father enters the room and reassures her not to worry, saying that he is strong. He promises that he will not fall to monsters and that he will be less careless than he was in the past, because his family's happiness matters more to him than anything else. Hearing this fills her with joy. Later, while lying awake in bed, Len reflects on his family. In his past life, his parents divorced early and he followed his mother. As the years passed, their conversations grew fewer, and by the time he became an adult, she never returned home. Even so, he remains grateful to her for allowing him to attend university and believes that perhaps she was dealing with her own struggles at the time. Days pass and Len continues to train with his father without missing a single session. Compared to his past life, he feels more fulfilled with each passing day. He studies, helps his mother with household chores, and trains with his father, gradually adapting to his new life and family. A few days later, Len trains with his father once again and as usual ends up exhausted, panting on the ground while his father suggests calling it a day. Len insists that he can still continue, but at that moment he feels something unusual. Noticing his reaction, his father asks what is wrong and whether he has hurt himself. Len replies that it is nothing, yet his body feels lighter and he takes his stance for another round. The moment he takes his first step, he moves so fast that it startles him. He closes the distance in an instant and lands a strike on his father, who manages to block it. Len is shocked that he just did that, while his father is equally surprised by how fast he has become. Suspecting a sudden surge of power, his father tells Len not to stop and urges him to charge again. As instructed, Len swiftly delivers another strike, which his father blocks once more, though it is far stronger than before. Despite his confusion over the sudden change, Len keeps pressing forward while his father continues dodging, finding each strike increasingly difficult to block. Finally, one of Len's blows breaks his father's sword, leaving him stunned as realization begins to set in. As Len goes in for what would have been a finishing blow, his father retreats, dodges, and grabs him midair, shocking him completely. Brimming with happiness, his father realizes that his son is a skill bearer. Len is confused, and at that moment his mother arrives and asks what is happening. Noticing her, his father calls her Milieu and with a smile while holding Len, explains that although he himself does not possess a skill, he is certain that Len's skill has leveled up, as it is the only logical explanation for his sudden strength. Indeed, when Len checks his status, his level has increased, granting him a boost to his physical abilities. His father believes Len should go to the capital and make a name for himself as a knight. Milieu finds the idea amazing and wonders what his skill might be, but his father points out that they do not have enough money to visit the church to have it identified. Len then nervously says there is no need to have it checked, as it is not harming him. His parents, however, find his lack of curiosity somewhat strange. Len explains that he has a different plan in mind, believing that revealing everything might create unnecessary trouble. He wishes to live a peaceful life in this quiet village. Instead of becoming a famous knight, he tells his father that he wants to become his successor here. He reasons that by hunting monsters together they can increase their income and help the village prosper, and more importantly, if anything dangerous happens, he can protect his father, a statement that surprises his mother. Over the past 7 years, Len has been happier than he ever was in his previous life, and he knows it is all thanks to his parents. Deep down, he understands that he is no longer who he once was and has fully accepted himself as Len. He expresses his wish for the three of them to live long and happy lives together. Touched by his words, his parents hug him, his father telling him to stop being such a brat. To Len, this feels like his life's second playthrough, and this time he intends to cherish every moment with his family. More importantly, to avoid a future filled with despair, he plans to live differently from the path laid out in the game. However, these dreams ultimately come to nothing. Despite his altered choices, he still ends up meeting the girl he was never supposed to encounter. In trying to defy fate and change the future, he only makes it more dangerous. All of this remains unknown to the current Len, who continues to enjoy his days with his parents. A few years later, in the northern city of Colossal within the Liamal Empire's territory, a beautiful girl sits alone on a bench, lost in thought. Noticing her, a knight asks if something is wrong, and she replies that she is simply bored now that her training is over. Hearing this, he looks ahead and realizes that all of his men have been defeated and are no longer qualified to serve as her practice partners. The girl then addresses the man as Vyaz and asks where he is going in full armor and whether something has happened in the territory. He replies that he has been tasked with patrolling the northwest part of the region, which she finds surprising, as it seems excessive to dispatch a knight of his caliber. Vyaz then reveals that he has been ordered to slay a troublesome beast that has recently appeared, a revelation that immediately captures her interest. Meanwhile, back in the village, 3 years have passed since Len first leveled up. Since his demon sword summoning skill reached level 2, he can see the requirements for level 3. However, his growth has been somewhat stagnant, as the next level requires a total of 1,500 points, and he has only managed to accumulate 658 points over 3 years. There are days when he is unable to train due to helping in the fields and preparing for the coming winter. Even so, he believes that this amount of power is more than enough to live peacefully in the village. An elderly woman notices him and greets him, and he responds warmly, calling her Grandma Rig. She mentions that his father is boasting again, claiming that Len will one day become a great knight in the capital. Len replies humbly that he has no intention of leaving the village. Just then, several knights arrive, and Grandma Rig suggests they return home quickly, as these men belong to the Baron. It turns out that the group is led by Vyaz, who now stands in front of Len's house. Vyaz apologizes for intruding, and Len's father Roy assures him that it is fine before asking the reason for his visit. Len also arrives, wondering why a servant of the territory's ruler has come here. Under the feudal system, every knight serves a noble, and Roy is one of the knights ordered by the Baron to protect this village. After reading the scroll Vyaz brings, Roy understands the situation and asks whether the beast has caused significant damage nearby. Vyaz replies that several villages have already been attacked, with witnesses claiming that the beast moves as fast as the wind. They have been patrolling the area to subjugate it but have found no clues, so they have come to request Roy's assistance. While Len is surprised by the news of the beast, Roy asks Vyaz if he has any idea of its rank. Vyaz replies that it is at least rank D, which shocks Roy. The monster ranking system, established by the guild, is based on threat level, and a D-rank monster is comparable to an early-stage boss in a game. Even with the combined strength of 5 average knights, such a beast is still difficult to defeat. Roy questions why a monster of that rank would appear here, as the surrounding area only has F-rank creatures. Vyaz explains that they are investigating the cause and are also planning to recruit knights from other villages. However, due to the wide range of their dispatch, reinforcements will take 20 days to arrive. He apologizes and asks everyone to hold out until then. Roy accepts and promises to increase patrols around the forest. Len silently tries to use his game knowledge to deduce what kind of monster it might be, while Roy suggests that the knights rest at the village as they appear exhausted. Vyaz thanks him and, while accepting the offer, notices Len standing nearby, lost in thought. He asks Roy if the boy is his son, which Roy confirms, then tells Len to properly greet the captain of the knights. Moments later, while Milieu gives the horses water and grass, Roy offers the knight a drink as Len speaks with Vyaz. After getting enough rest, the knights prepare to depart and the Ashton family bids them farewell. One knight remarks that Len is the same age as the young lady, and Vyaz agrees, adding that Len is a skill bearer and that he would have tested his ability if they had met under different circumstances. For now, all he can do is hope that Len and the Ashton family remain safe until the matter is resolved. Meanwhile, as Roy declares that they will be getting busy starting today, Len asks if he can see the beast wanted notice. Roy refuses, saying Len does not need to worry about it, and reveals that he once hunted a D-rank beast by himself. This revelation comes as a surprise, and Roy explains that it happened long before Len was born. Len does not expect his father to be so strong, which only explains why he has never managed to win against him. Later, Roy returns home with more prey than usual and plans to increase the amount for the time being. These particular boars live around the village and have especially delicious meat, which attracts other beasts that come solely to feed on them. Hearing this, Len asks whether Roy plans to reduce the number of these easy prey so that D-rank beasts will not come near. Roy confirms this and says that once they are gone, all that will remain are animal feces and footprints. He believes it is fine, as it is not guaranteed that a D-rank beast will appear in the nearby forest. From that day on, Roy, who previously hunted only in the mornings, begins entering the forest in the afternoon after receiving the knight's warning and continues hunting until sunset. One day, as they bathe together, Len asks whether Roy thinks he is overworking himself and says that he believes it is time for him to start helping with the hunts. Roy agrees, but only after the current matter is settled. He apologizes for not being able to accompany Len in his sword training. Len says it is fine, noting that both of his parents are busy and that it would be a waste to let the meat spoil. Hearing this, Roy thanks him, while Len simply hopes that nothing happens. He has lived this peaceful life for 10 years and does not want to lose it. Soon after, Len notices that Roy has fallen asleep, which is natural given how tired he is, though Len tells him not to fall asleep during a bath. With this new routine, the days pass quickly until the night of the 10th day. Len, after bringing his mother some firewood, points out that it is getting late and that Roy has not returned yet. After a brief pause, Milieu replies that she will go check on him. Len suggests going with her, but she refuses, saying it is dangerous. He insists that it is too dangerous for her to go alone and that even if she tries to stop him, he will still follow. Len notices his mother's reaction as she stands without turning around and recalls her constant worry about Roy getting hurt. Eventually, they both enter the forest to search for him, though it is far too dark. Milieu points out the 2 torches placed on the bridge at the forest entrance and asks whether Len can hear the flow of water, telling him to be careful, which he acknowledges. She also tells him that they can only go as far as the bridge, as beasts roam beyond it. As they step onto the bridge, Milieu notices someone leaning against a tree. Thinking it might be her husband, she calls out and walks toward the figure. When the person turns, both she and Len recognize him as Roy and ask if he is all right. At that moment, a realization strikes Len as he wonders why Roy is resting in a place like this. Worried by what she hears, Milieu quickly runs toward Roy, and upon getting close, she is shocked. The light from the torch reveals that he is severely injured and breathing heavily, which shocks Len as well, and he calls out to his father in worry. While Milieu tells Roy to get a hold of himself, Len hears something behind him. Startled, he quickly turns around and looks, but there is nothing there. However, just then, from the side, a boar lunges at him, which he blocks using the wooden sword and the torch, though he struggles as the beast presses down on him. Panicking, Milieu strikes the boar with the torch and tells it to get off her son, while Len shouts for her to run. At that moment, he notices 2 more boars appearing while he is still immobilized. Then his physical enhancement ability activates, and he forcefully pushes the boar away, throwing it into another one. The remaining boar charges and leaps toward Milieu, but before it can harm her, he swiftly strikes it down. Still surprised that he defeats it in a single blow, another boar leaps at him from behind, yet he quickly turns around and strikes it down as well, and upon seeing this, the final boar flees. Witnessing his own strength, Len realizes that with all his training and this ability, he is now strong enough to fight them. Later, they take Roy back to the house, where Granny Rig treats him throughout the night. She assures them that his condition has at least stabilized, and upon hearing this, Milieu feels relieved and thanks Granny Rig. She also thanks Len, knowing that without him, she couldn't have brought Roy back to the village. Although he is glad that his father is safe for now, Len refuses to believe that Roy was beaten by such weak monsters, and he wonders if Roy encountered a D-rank monster that may still be lurking in the forest. To make matters worse, reinforcements will not arrive for another 10 days. He worries that if the monster reaches the village, his mother and the other villagers will be attacked, so he believes there must be something he can do and goes back to the bridge. There he finds the boar he killed the previous day and feels relieved to see that it has not yet been eaten by another monster. He decides to hurry and bring it home before the stench attracts a D-rank monster. But just then, cloud-like glowing particles emerge from the boar's body and are absorbed into his bracelet. Realizing what this is, he quickly checks his status and confirms that both his skill proficiencies have increased by 2. He suspects this occurs because he absorbs magical power from the demon stone inside the monster's body, which confirms what he suspected as a child, and convinces him that he must hunt monsters himself to absorb this power. Later that night, he suggests to his mother that starting the next day, he will take over his father's duties. This shocks Milieu, but Len calmly states that he is aware of the danger and that, as a member of the Ashton family like his father, it is his responsibility to protect the village. His mother insists that no matter how strong he has become, he is still a child, but Len points out that with Roy injured, he is the only one left who can fight the monster. Until reinforcements arrive, he asks her to allow him to protect everyone, which places her in a difficult position. That night, Milieu does not sleep and remains by Roy's side, but in the morning she accepts Len's request on the condition that he returns before dusk if he enters the forest. Later, as Len prepares to leave, his mother reminds him not to go too deep into the forest and to use Tsurugi Rock as a landmark. Tsurugi Rock is a massive, sharp stone shaped like a sword and can be seen from a great distance. Setting that aside, he recalls that he still has not tried the Demon Sword of Woods attribute, Nature Magic. He remembers that in the game there was a boss capable of using nature magic. As he is lost in thought, he suddenly notices a boar charging toward him. Though startled at first, he quickly calms down and decides to use that magic on the boar. As he wonders how to activate it, he simply gives a command, and vines begin emerging from the ground. In an instant, numerous vines burst from the ground, wrapping around the boar and completely immobilizing it. This surprises Len, and he finds it amazing how easily it works. Even so, he cannot bring himself to inflict more pain than necessary, so he ends it with one swift strike. Just then, two more boars appear, and although it requires mana, he decides to take this chance to practice. Later, he brings back 12 boars he manages to hunt, shocking the villagers. On the second day, following his plan, he again hunts 12 smaller boars and brings them back to the village. On the third day, he manages to increase the number, and by the fourth and fifth days, he significantly raises his haul. Fortunately, throughout these days, he does not encounter that rank D monster. More importantly, thanks to this hunting, he was able to stock up a large number of points, and finds himself somewhat looking forward to unlocking the Demon Sword of Metal. Later, as he returns home, he finds Granny Rig in a hurry, explaining to Milieu that Roy's condition is not good and telling her to wait outside while she takes care of him. Shocked, Len approaches his mother and asks what is going on. After a brief pause, she explains that Roy's condition has worsened since dusk. They have used many precious medical herbs, but he is barely holding on to life. Shocked and worried, Len asks why this happened, to which she replies that she does not know. To make matters worse, the medicinal herb stock is running out and will be completely used up tonight. Just then, Granny Rig comes out of the room and tells Milieu to bring the formula box from her house. Milieu quickly accepts the task and rushes off. Len then asks Granny Rig whether the herb's growing habitat is located somewhere nearby. She explains that the herb used to grow around the foot of Tsurugi Rock, but it went extinct during a harsh winter decades ago. This news shocks him, and noticing the herb on the table, he asks if it is the same one. She replies affirmatively and asks him to wait outside while she takes care of the patient. After exiting the room, he becomes certain that the herb is rondo grass, the same healing item he often used in the game. He refuses to believe it has truly gone extinct and decides to check it with his own eyes, even though the forest's danger increases tenfold at night. Without hesitation, he rushes toward Tsurugi Rock, refusing to stand by and do nothing while his father is dying. After running all the way from the village, he finally arrives at Tsurugi Rock. He immediately begins searching for the herb, but as expected, there is none left at the foot of the stone. He then decides to look at the top of the rock and uses nature magic to create vines, which he uses to climb. After a long climb, he finally reaches the top and sees it filled with rondo grass. He is overjoyed that it has not completely gone extinct and believes that with this amount, he can save his father. Just then, however, he notices the bones of boars and wonders how they could be in such a high place. Upon closer inspection, he also finds ornaments among them. A strong sense of unease washes over him, and he quickly gathers as much of the herb as possible. He climbs down the rock and immediately runs away. On his way, he notices several boars that become startled by his sudden arrival and charge to attack, but he easily eliminates them. From this, he realizes something is wrong as the boars seem afraid of something and are trying to flee. Just then, he hears something let out a heavy breath. Realizing it is behind him, he slowly turns around and understands what the D-rank monster is. It is the Chief Wolven, a beast that stands above all D-rank monsters, and one can obtain rare items simply by defeating it. Without wasting a single moment, he tries to run away. However, the Wolven is so fast that it instantly closes the distance between them, but before it can bite him, Len quickly jumps aside to dodge. Not only does this monster have the upper hand in speed, but it also possesses a unique trait. Just as he thinks this, Len feels a sudden gush of wind and narrowly dodges as a tree shatters beside him, remembering that its ability is wind magic. By using wind that gathers around its body, the Chief Wolven creates an invisible hand capable of stealing items and, of course, attacking as well. This is not an enemy he should face, but there is no way it is going to let him escape, so he must find a way to win. Although the attack power of his nature magic is still low, it is his only option for getting close to its stomach. As he wonders how to strike its weak point, he suddenly notices that one of its legs is injured. He suspects that his father may have fought this monster and been wounded because of it. He realizes that by attacking its leg, his father managed to escape, and that same injury is the reason the monster has not attacked the village. Believing that his father has fulfilled his role as a knight, he knows he must not give up. Just then, the wolf howls and attacks with wind magic, prompting him to quickly use nature magic vines to block it. The attack slices through the vines, and he barely manages to dodge. The Chief Wolven then rushes into attack, but he quickly uses the vines again to immobilize it. After that, he leaps into the air and lands with the full force of his body to strike. However, his demon sword shatters from the impact, something that has never happened before. Confused, he wonders if he can summon it again as another counterattack approaches. He is indeed able to resummon the sword, but doing so gives him an excruciating headache, making him wonder if it is because he resummoned a broken weapon. At that moment, the Chief Wolven grabs him in its mouth and slams him into a tree. Seriously injured and completely unable to move, he covers himself with vines to prevent it from attacking for a short time. As the monster begins tearing through the vines with its jaws, he realizes he will lose consciousness at this rate. He then remembers the herbs in his pack that he could use to heal, but the image of his bedridden father comes to mind, and he decides against using them, knowing that in the worst-case scenario, they might not be enough to save his father. Just then, he remembers that there is still one weapon left he can use. He cuts open the vines and releases a smokescreen to escape. However, he does not get far before the chief wolven catches up to him. He uses nature magic to bind the wolven, even if only for a moment, but he cannot maintain it any longer because he has run out of mana. At that instant, he notices the 3 boar corpses he killed earlier and rushes to absorb their magic power, as he is only 3 points away from unlocking the demon's sword of metal. But just then the wolven chief roars as it catches up once again, and this time Len throws his wooden sword, which the beast easily dodges. However, the throw is only a feint, as he uses the last bit of magic stored in the sword to detonate nature magic that binds the wolf. With this brief window of time, he quickly absorbs the 3 boars' magical power, and leveling up to Demon's Sword of Metal, he begins summoning the blade. At that moment, the wolven chief lunges forward, aiming to bite through his entire body, but by then the Demon's Sword of Metal is fully summoned, and he uses it to stab the wolven chief from inside its mouth straight through its head, killing it instantly. For the first time, he successfully summons the Demon's Sword of Metal at the perfect moment, and he is surprised by his own timing. After the wolven chief is defeated, his bracelet begins absorbing the creature's magic stone. However, his body is completely exhausted, leaving him unable to move as he tightly grips his bag, thinking about his mother and father. Just then, he hears the sound of horse hooves and people approaching his direction after hearing the beast's final cry. Before losing consciousness, he recognizes the figures as the knights who were with Vyas. The knights rush straight to Len, leaving a few men behind at the monster's corpse, and without wasting a moment, they hurry him back to the village. Shortly afterward, they arrive at the Ashton house and begin pounding on the door. When Milieu opens it, one of the knights apologizes for the lack of formal greeting, explaining that they cannot spare even a moment as they bring the child inside. Milieu becomes terrified upon seeing Len unconscious in the knight's arms and immediately asks what happened. The knight explains that they arrived to find Len unconscious but otherwise fine, desperately clutching his bag, suggesting that something important must be inside. When she opens the bag, she finds it filled with rondo grass, the same herb her husband desperately needs. Realizing that Len went into danger for his father's sake, she hugs him tightly as tears fall. A few days later, the knights return to the northern city of Colossal and report everything to Vyas. Vyas is surprised to learn that Len defeated the wolven chief on his own, and the young lady nearby hears the entire report as well. She finds the idea of a boy single-handedly defeating a D-rank beast deeply intriguing. 2 months later, after fully recovering, Len returns to the peak of Tsurugi. That day, his stats have improved significantly, and among the swords he receives is the Demon's Sword of the Bandit, which resembles finger armor more than a traditional blade. He didn't expect to receive another sword after defeating the wolven chief. He comes to the peak to gather herbs as well as retrieve the ornaments he saw 2 months earlier, and once he has them, he begins his descent. As he heads down, one of the knights left behind by Vyas asks why Len did not call for him upon entering the forest, especially since he has not fully recovered. With a troubled expression, Len apologizes. Setting that aside, he thanks the knights, noting that he survived only because they arrived faster than expected. The knight replies that Len's gratitude makes the rush worthwhile, though they are even more surprised by his strength. The knight then notices the bag and asks about it, and Len explains that it contains the treasure hidden by the wolven chief. He reveals his plan to sell the items and use the money to help the village, but asks about the matter of taxes. The knight explains that this reward serves as a tax exemption for the year, as the wolven chief's raw materials include extremely valuable medicinal herbs, which the lord is purchasing at a price slightly above market value. Len finds the news astonishing, realizing that the village should be able to prosper for decades to come. Later, they arrive at the house, where Roy mentions hearing about the treasure and says he is proud of how much Len has achieved. Len, however, gives the credit to Roy, saying he could only defeat the beast because it was already injured. Hearing this, Roy comments that Len is as selfless as ever and asks if there is anything he wants. Len asks his father for a large spherical stone, which he is certain is the Celsha Pearl, an item extremely rare even among wolven chief drops. He then also presents his bracelet as part of the treasure and asks if he can keep it as well so he can wear it openly. Roy agrees to everything, though he adds that Len acted recklessly and caused him great worry as a parent. However, he also acknowledges that Len put his life on the line to protect everyone. After such a long time, peace finally returns once again to the nameless village. A few days later, as usual, Len helps his mother with the laundry when he notices someone sitting in a tree near their house. As he approaches, he realizes it is a girl around his age and wonders who she is, as she does not appear to be from the village. Noticing him, the girl turns and asks if he is Len Ashton. He replies affirmatively, yet for some reason he cannot shake the feeling that he has seen her somewhere before. The girl then takes out 2 swords and, tossing one to him, asks about his injuries. Len sets the laundry bucket down and replies that his wounds are healed, and while asking how she knows him, he picks up the sword as the girl suggests they begin. In an instant, she closes the distance between them and forcefully thrusts her sword at him. Len blocks the attack with ease as she continues her assault, and the confused Len continues to defend himself. She finds it incredible that Len handles his sword so well despite having fallen behind. He understands her amazement but asks why she is suddenly doing this. She tells him not to worry, explaining that the blade is dull, though that was not his concern to begin with, and learning this, he wonders if she planned this match from the start. Finding the situation far too troublesome, Len decides to end it before either of them gets hurt. He blocks her next strike and, grabbing her arm, pins her down, announcing his victory. Flustered, the girl points out that he is too close, something he did not intend, so he quickly backs away. She then asks for one more match and tells him to steady his sword. When he asks if she is truly going again, she replies affirmatively, saying she has not admitted defeat yet, which makes him wonder what in the world is going on. Just then, Vyaz and the other knights arrive at the scene. Addressing the girl as princess, Vyaz asks her to stop, while she questions why he is there. Though slightly annoyed, she decides to explain everything and first offers a small curtsy. She then takes out a letter, stating that as a representative of her father, she has come with a message for the Ashton family. She mentions that her father speaks highly of the Ashton family for their triumph over the Wolven chief, and has expressed great expectations for Len's future. Hearing these details, Len begins to realize who this girl is. She introduces herself as Licia Clossel, the Saintess of White. This revelation utterly shocks him, as she is the very saintess whom the Len from the game had killed. The knights then humbly ask Licia why she proceeded alone without their knowledge and, more worryingly, without an escort, to which she replies that they were taking too long of a break. Meanwhile, Len is lost in thought, wondering why the girl he is supposed to kill in the game is already here, and so much earlier than expected. Later, she chats with Roy while the other knight is taken care of by Milieu. After conversing with Roy, Licia and Len are left alone, having some tea while he wonders how things turned out like this. In the game, she does not join the protagonist's party, as she is considerably strong, and the other main character does not even match her unless they raise their level. She is also highly popular due to her exceptional appearance, and since she cannot be romanced in the game, she is referred to as the unconquerable heroine. Licia then breaks the silence, asking Len if he has any plans to visit them. She came here to see his ability in person, and after sparring with him, she is convinced that he is not only strong but also courageous. Despite being suddenly matched against her, his decision to pick up a sword without hesitation is enough proof for her. He feels a bit irritated upon realizing her motivation for challenging him to a duel. He heard from the knight that this village is located on the Colossal frontier and that it takes 10 days to reach it from the city. So he had thought that as long as he stayed holed up in this remote village, he would never encounter the feudal lord's daughter. Yet she comes all this way of her own accord just to spar with him after hearing about the chief Wolven. He explains to her that she overestimates him, because his father had already injured the chief Wolven, so it was not solely his own ability that led to the victory. He also points out that he did not even use proper technique, so he believes he does not have the courage she speaks of. She responds by telling him not to be so humble, saying that if it were anyone else they would have boasted about their strength, and she finds him different from the noblemen who are all talk. That is why she wants him to come to Colossal with her no matter what, so they can spar whenever they want. He realizes she enjoyed their fight, and judging from their spar, he can tell that she is a hard worker. Licia notices that he has been distancing himself from her and asks him if he perhaps does not like her. He denies it, explaining that if he left, he would leave his father alone to deal with everything, and if another beast were to appear, the village would be destroyed. He also adds that he likes this village life and never thought of living in the city. Hearing this, she understands his reasoning, but in her mind, she refuses to give up on him. As the sun sets, Licia decides to stay the night at the Ashton house and they have dinner together. After dinner, Len is petting the horse when a sword is tossed at him. Realizing it is Licia, he asks if this is supposed to be a post-meal workout. She playfully replies that it is and assures him that she has obtained permission from Vyaz and his parents. Len finds this troubling, wondering how she persuaded Vyaz. As he goes to pick up the sword, he realizes that he does not have to, but Licia says that if he does not, she will extend her stay. Hearing this, he quickly picks it up, nervously saying that he just happens to be in the mood for sparring. Seeing his reaction, she feels a bit sad and asks why he goes this far to reject her, though she believes he has his reasons. However, she wagers that if he loses, he will have to reveal that reason as well as come to colossal with her. Hearing this, Len nervously asks what happens if he wins, to which she replies that in that case she will come to this village instead, which is a lose-lose situation for Len. Just then, after giving him a half-warning, she closes the distance between them and strikes, which he blocks. She continues attacking, but he effortlessly dodges each blow. Surprised, she asks him how he manages to block her when she attacked so suddenly. Ignoring that, he asks her why she is so fixated on beating him in the first place, to which she replies that it is obvious she hates losing. As the Saintess of White, she cannot afford to lose to a boy her own age. Hearing this, he says he does not understand how being the Saintess relates to the matter. She explains that her skill as the Saintess of White grants her proficiency in swordsmanship and the ability to cast sacred magic, and thus losing despite having all these advantages leaves her terribly frustrated. She then declares that she is getting serious and delivers a powerful strike, which he blocks as well. Noticing the weight of her attack, he realizes that Licia has become far faster and stronger, which must be due to her use of sacred magic. From what he recalls, sacred magic combines the power of white magic which heals wounds, with holy magic which counters undead curses and detoxifies poison, creating a powerful force that can both buff party members and enhance combat. In short, sacred magic, swordsmanship, and enhanced physical abilities are unified into the Saintess of White's skill set, making her extremely strong when she uses it. He asks her why she did not use it earlier. She replies that she could have, but she would have been scolded if she had used it without Vyaz's permission. Realizing that she has received permission this time, he believes Vyaz spoils her too much, but since the duel is becoming serious, he decides to hold his ground. As she begins attacking with greater force, he swiftly blocks every strike without missing a single one. Now accustomed to her movements, when she commits fully to a thrust, he steps back, shifts his position, and places his sword at her neck. He admits that she is strong, but compared to the Wolven chief, she is nothing. Irritated how easily he got her, she quickly retreats and slashes vertically, which he dodges effortlessly. He then locks the arm wielding her sword and once again places his blade near her neck. This shocks her, and in her irritation she slashes at him again to break free, continuing to swing her sword and refusing to admit defeat. However, Len decides not to waste any more time. He redirects her leg with his sword, spinning her off balance, and before she can recover, he brings her down and pins her to the ground with his blade pressed to her neck. With that, he declares his victory while she remains too stunned to respond. Muttering that there is no way, she swings her sword again and he lets her escape, but she still insists that she has not lost yet, which confuses Len. At that moment, they are both startled by the sound of clapping. It comes from Vyaz, who praises Len for possessing such incredible skill at his age and for defeating Licia even when she uses sacred magic. Seeing this, Vyaz is reminded once more that this young man single-handedly defeated the Wolven chief, and he suspects that in addition to Roy's training, Len must have exerted a great deal of effort to become this strong. He then asks Licia whether she has thoroughly comprehended this young man's strength to her very core, adding that he believes it would be most beneficial if, upon returning to the residence, she feels even more motivated by this experience. Irritated by her loss and a little shy, she agrees and gives a slight bow. She apologizes for suddenly barging in on him earlier that day, but admits that it was a valuable experience. He replies that it was a great experience for him as well, to which Licia responds by lowering her head and saying she will go ahead and get some rest before leaving. Vyaz then apologizes to Len, asking him to forgive her, and assures him that he will certainly convey to the Baron that they have received the Ashton family's kind hospitality. Len replies that it is fine, as he feels he did not do much. Vyaz counters that he did, explaining that even her subordinates, let alone someone Licia's age, cannot compete with her, and that she has grown complacent, making this a good eye-opener for her. Vyaz adds that, if possible, he would have liked to stay a few more days and let the two of them continue sparring, a thought Len dislikes even considering. However, Vyaz admits that they must set out tomorrow, as Licia was only able to come to the village after negotiating with her father to undertake several tasks. When Len asks about this, Vyaz explains that she has been tasked with visiting the surrounding villages on the Baron's behalf to calm the unrest caused by the recent turmoil. Learning this, Len finds Licia amazing for being able to act as the feudal lord's substitute at such a young age. This, however, is to be expected, as in the game she excels in both military and literary arts and achieves top grades at the academy. Even so, he still finds her somewhat overbearing and difficult to understand, yet believes she is a straightforward and good person deep down. Despite this, he wonders how things ended up the way they did for her in the game. It remains a mystery, as her childhood is rarely discussed there, and she does not appear at such an early stage, which is why he never expected to meet her so soon. The next day, as the rooster crows at dawn, Licia is already awake, having been unable to sleep the entire night as she refuses to give up on Len. After freshening up, she writes a letter and gives it to Vyaz, who asks whether it is meant for Len. She confirms this and explains that she had been thinking of giving it to him before departing, adding that she is also writing another letter of gratitude to the Ashton family. She believes her sentiment of inviting him to Colossal would be better conveyed on paper and asks for Vyaz's opinion. However, Vyaz has a troubled expression and seems to be struggling to say something. Noticing this, she asks if she made a mistake somewhere. He replies by pointing out that the letter looks like a love letter, which shocks her, and she asks if he is certain. He affirms this and points out an example where she writes that the passion she feels for him now surpasses what she felt before they met. Licia sees nothing wrong with this, insisting that she meant what she wrote, as the rumored exceptional boy proves to be even more outstanding when she meets him in person. Vyaz says that he understands her intention, but fears that it comes across as a maiden desperately in love. He also points out other wordings, such as her praise of his valor, bravery, and gallantry, as well as her request for him to speak with her and tell her not to give up on him. She still finds nothing unusual, reasoning that if someone displays such amazing swordsmanship, anyone would want to spar with him again and again. Vyaz insists, however, that it sounds like a provincial girl who has just witnessed a hero, and upon hearing this, she takes the letter from him to read it herself. Indeed, she agrees that it does come across as a love letter. She sits down in embarrassment, wondering why this happens, noting that she is used to writing administrative letters and considering whether this is because it is her first personal letter. She then decides not to give it to Len and instead plans to dispose of it when they leave the village. A few moments later, Licia and the knights set out to leave the village, leaving some knights behind. On her way out, she does not speak with Len out of embarrassment and meekly departs. However, due to a sudden gust of wind, the letter she intends to throw away flies out of her bag, though at the time she does not realize that she has lost it. Meanwhile, right after they leave, Len returns to the Tsurugi stone. Since he has not yet tested the demon sword of the bandit, he decides to do a bit of practice there. He notices a bird flying by and, deciding to test the sword on it, swings a finger toward it. Although nothing happens to the bird, one of its feathers appears in his hand, meaning the item can be used to steal. He then notices two birds chirping, one passing a piece of paper to the other, and wondering what it is, he uses the demon sword of the bandit to steal the paper. After obtaining it, he begins reading the contents and becomes confused, wondering if it is a love letter. It is the very same letter that flew from Licia, while she remains completely unaware that she has lost it. Len wonders who could have wrote this letter for him. But judging by the high-quality paper, along with the polite phrasing that mentions inviting him to Colossal and praises his swordsmanship, he suspects it may have been written by Licia, yet he cannot understand why it is here now. The timing feels strange, and the uncertainty leaves him unsettled as he turns the matter over in his mind. Just then, the sound of many horse hooves reaches his ears. He looks toward the source and sees several figures approaching along the road. As they draw closer, it becomes clear that they are knights, but they do not resemble those who travel with Vyaz. More importantly, the crest on their banner is unfamiliar, marked with a different emblem altogether, leading Len to suspect that they belong to another domain. The knights soon come to a halt around him, spreading out and surrounding him in a practiced formation. One of them steps forward and asks whether he is a subject of the village ruled by the Ashton family. Len affirms this and in turn asks who they are. The knight opens his helmet and explains that they have received a message from Viscount Givens and have come to deliver it, then requests that Len lead them to the Ashton family's estate. Len is surprised by this revelation, as he recalls that the Viscount's domain lies to the northeast and shares no direct relationship with the Ashton family. Still, setting his doubts aside, he recognizes that a Viscount outranks a baron and cannot be ignored. So he agrees and tells the knight that he understands and will guide them to his house. The knight hesitates, confused by the boy's choice of words, but Len does not bother to explain. Instead, mild irritation stirs within him as he wonders what trouble has arrived this time, especially with Licia having left only recently. Before long, Len leads the knights to the Ashton residence and escorts their leader inside to meet his father. As the knight delivers the message to Roy, Len waits outside with the others, accompanied by one of Vyaz's knights. Moments later, the visiting knight emerges and openly expresses his surprise, admitting that he did not expect the boy to be Len Ashton. He then tells Len to rejoice, adding that the Viscount has a message for him as well. When Len asks what the message contains, the knight explains that Viscount Givens holds Len's abilities in high regard and wishes to employ him under his own household. The announcement shocks Len, and before he can respond, the knight left behind by Vyas, a man named Lionel, steps forward and points out that his lord was the first to extend an invitation to Len. Recognizing Lionel as a knight of the colossal family, the visiting knight responds that since Len has not yet given a reply to that earlier invitation, he sees no issue with approaching him directly. Lionel counters that the problem predates that matter entirely, reminding him that the village falls under the dominion of the colossal family and that any approach toward Len should first be discussed with them. He adds that regardless of differences in court rank or political faction, this is a matter of courtesy that even a Viscount's sworn servant should understand. The boldness of Lionel's stance takes everyone by surprise. After a brief pause, the knight concedes the point and agrees to withdraw for now, stating that he will correct his approach. However, before leaving, he declares that he will return, making it clear that he has not abandoned his intentions. Later, Roy reads through the letter in detail and finds that it lists numerous justifications, even proposing the incorporation of the village into Viscount Givens's domain. Disturbed by this, he asks Lionel whether the wave of factional disputes has already spread this far. Lionel answers in the affirmative, while Len listens in quiet shock, only then realizing the broader implications. From what Len recalls, the Liamal Empire is divided into three major factions, with every noble aligned to one of them. The first is the Imperial faction, which holds deep reverence for the founder of the nation, the Lion King, and believes that only the Imperial family is fit to rule. The second is the Hero faction, composed of noble houses that once produced heroes who defeated the Demon King and led by the seven great families. This faction is widely known as the central force in the legend of the Seven Heroes. Viscount Givens belongs to this group, which believes the authority of the Imperial faction should be restrained to make the Liamal Empire more free and democratic while also reducing wealth disparity. The third is the Neutral faction, made up of pacifists who avoid conflict and show respect to both major sides, and Baron Colossal is counted among them. Moving on, Len asks whether it is truly possible to transfer an area from one noble's domain to another so easily. Lionel explains that although such cases are rare, they can occur if all parties involved reach an agreement. Roy then questions the purpose of taking over a small village like this even if it is possible, to which Lionel replies that he is not entirely certain, though he suspects that some underlying strategy is at play, as such actions must be driven by hidden motives. At that point, another knight, Lance, adds that many factions hope to draw the colossal family into their fold since the Baron is an exceptional noble and the presence of the Saintess carries great significance. After hearing all this, Len feels no desire to involve himself in a power struggle riddled with conspiracies. However, since the Ashton family serves the colossal family, this matter is not entirely unrelated to him either. More troubling still is the possibility that the entire village has already been dragged into something far beyond their understanding. With that in mind, Len decides to read the message, and although he does not know Viscount Givens' true intentions, he plans to remain cautious. As he goes through the letter, he notices something unusual and calls out to his father. He points out that the letter states an intention to incorporate the village and station knights there to compensate for a lack of military strength. Len asks whether this lack of military strength refers to the Wolven Chief incident, and Roy replies affirmatively, explaining that the incident was so unusual it's almost abnormal, as there is otherwise no record of the Ashton family being short on military power. Hearing this, Len recalls Vyas mentioning that if damage caused by monsters within a territory continues due to inadequate forces, the feudal lord can be punished. Lionel confirms this, as protecting the territory ultimately falls under the feudal lord's responsibility. Following this line of reasoning, Len asks whether significant damage to this village and its neighboring one could result in punishment for the colossal family. He then voices his suspicion that Viscount Given may be aiming for exactly this outcome. This conclusion shocks everyone present. Roy asks whether Len is suggesting that Viscount Given is attempting to frame Baron Colossal by exploiting the Wolven Chief incident. Len confirms this suspicion and further believes that the Viscount may intend to pretend to protect the accused Baron, only to later lure him into the hero faction. Worse still, Len considers the possibility that this scheme has been in motion from the very beginning, carefully plotted over a long period of time. In the absolute worst-case scenario, even the Wolven Chief incident itself may be connected to Viscount Given. Roy is visibly shaken by this thought and says that such speculation goes too far, asking whether Len is implying that the Viscount deliberately unleashed a monster. Len responds that he has no evidence and may be reading too deeply into the situation, but if his suspicions are correct, then everything fits together too neatly to be ignored. Roy is left completely speechless, pointing out that if this were true, it would trigger a massive scandal. Lionel finally breaks his silence, expressing his shock that Len arrived at the same conclusion so quickly, as the Baron himself has been entertaining similar doubts. He praises Len as a truly sharp-minded individual, but Len humbly replies that it is nothing more than conjecture and that, at present, there is very little they can actually do. For now, remaining vigilant is the only way to prevent unforeseen events. Roy agrees, tensing his body as he remarks that they cannot continue living here indefinitely, though Milieu urges him not to overexert himself. Lance then suggests reporting everything to the Baron immediately and urging him to heighten security and vigilance, a proposal Len readily supports. Although Len's position in this world has changed, he cannot help but feel that nothing has truly become easier, as he may one day be forced to confront the same hero faction that were once his allies in the game, and he has no idea what might happen when that time comes.